Bend Around the Wind by Skylia. Chapter 92. Falling Sky. Any other day, the sight would have filled Tony with something ridiculously close to awe. Today, the vast blue, purple, and yellow shape left him cold. Not the cold of indifference, but the burning coldness of rage. Because this was it, the other was here. Loki was here. It took too long to get here. What exactly are we waiting for? Hatchet asked. We need to go! And what area should we start with to cover all 180 million square miles of the planet? Tony asked him in return. He and Hatchet were taking turns being the most agitated person on board. They both went through all negative emotions that could possibly exist, from anger to apathy, only to start all over again every few days, like the most messed up mental merry-go-round. Tony was in his disconcertingly calm stage, while Hatchet was more on the raging like a madman side of anger at the moment. The elf was eager to move and kill something. Tony was more than sure that he was going to slip into that sort of mood too, as soon as he had a target.
If I may continue,
Drongo said before Hatchet could speak again. He was still calm, of course, despite being interrupted so many times already. Yes, you were talking about the asteroid field, Steve told him.
Which is the debris left behind from the 3 moons of Akram that were destroyed some decades ago,
Drongo said.
Which is why the surface is constantly showered with meteorites.
Who lives in a place like this? Rhodey asked.
No one,
Drongo said.
The people of Akram left their planet hundreds of years ago. The sun is a nebula now. Soon it will be but a dwarf, and the planet will be too cold for even the remaining vegetation and animals to survive.
A dying star and a dying planet. Steve nodded. Why is the other here? It's not a good base for an army.
No, I'm afraid we have something much worse waiting for us,
Drongo said. Drongo turned grim as soon as they slowed down and he saw where they've arrived. They were not exactly in the Fornax galaxy anymore, but they were close enough for Drongo to know a thing or two about the area. He only had to take one look at the nebula to recognize it. What could be worse than an army? Jiyu asked. There was some disbelief in her tone, but mostly just trepidation, because Drongo never threw words around lightly.
The people of Akram used to be a terrible force to be reckoned with,
Drongo said.
It was said that the only thing that rivaled their enormous fleet was the fortress they have turned their planet into. Their technology allowed them to send out all of their forces into battle fought far, while their cities were protected by machines.
I really don't like where this is going,
Bruce commented quietly. Tony felt the same way.
The people may be gone now, leaving their cities quiet as tombs, but if the other found a way to reactivate all of their weapons and machines, well...
He drilled off. He did not need to finish the sentence for everyone to understand. They were all silent for a moment, considering the words. If we simply fly close, they're gonna tear us apart before we even reach the surface, Steve said.
It is a possibility,
Drongo said.
I have no way to know how much of the planet's defenses are working, since it's been many years, but it must be why the other chose this planet.
Technology this advanced, they're probably self-maintaining to an extensive level, Tony said. Maybe everything works. And these guys just up and left everything behind, Bucky asked.
No technology I know of can stop a star from dying or keep a planet from being swallowed by it,
Drongo said.
And what they had built here could be built up somewhere else again. They wanted to save themselves, not the machines. If the machines are to protect the planet, how was the other allowed to land?
Thor asked.
And what does he have to gain from being here if the planet is doomed?
Maybe he wants to take the weapons,
Bruce guessed.
That's what he wanted from Tony too, right? Weapons. His armies are destroyed one after another, so he wants something better. If he found a way to activate and control what's on this planet, then he's got exactly what he wanted.
Doesn't matter since you won't leave from here alive, Tony said with absolute certainty. So, when are your buddies coming? Bucky asked, looking at Drongo.
Kara will be here,
Drongo answered resolutely. Nobody argued with him.
Stark, what do we do?
B asked. Tony thought of his constant headaches as he stared at the slowly increasing percentage of Jarvis's scan of the planet. They were searching for the other's ship. It was big enough to be spotted even from space if they searched well enough. Hatchet's bow pointed at this place like a giant neon arrow. Now they only needed to find the exact location. Once they had that, they needed to reach the surface, get through whatever defenses the planet had. Rhodey had a thoughtful expression on his face, but as the seconds ticked by without Tony saying anything, it slowly turned more and more concerned. "You're thinking about doing your mind-hacking thing again, aren't you?" he asked.
I do not think you're well enough.
Drongo said right away. Cap was immediately frowning, Bucky was wearing his unhappy face, and Julia was already opening her mouth to protest. "Believe it or not," Tony exclaimed loudly, silencing everyone, "that's not what I planned. Not that I wouldn't try it if there was no other option." There was no point in denying it. "So what did you think of?" Hatchet asked. The lack of concern on his face was more reassuring than annoying. He was moving over to his ruthless, no bullshit phase then, now that they were so close. He was very efficient like that, and they really needed that more than simple concern. Especially considering how crazy Tony's latest plan was. "I'll fly right in," he said simply. When the others realized that by fly right in, he meant putting on his suit and going out into space all on his own, then attempting to enter the atmosphere and land without getting shot or killed or burnt to a cinder, well, they were not happy. Tony designed the Mark Firebird 2 to be able to handle the cold and, more importantly, the vacuum in space. Also, while he did not have the chance to test it, entering the atmosphere should not be a problem either. He trusted his own skills, so he was not worried about any of those. The defense of the planet was another matter, though. Look, they obviously designed their defense against hostile ships, not a single dude in a suit. I probably won't even register on their scans. "Probably?" Rhodey repeated dubiously as Tony put his helmet on. He was the only one still arguing. Everyone long gave up and didn't even try stopping him. As soon as Jarvis's scan found what they were looking for, he was putting on his suit. "Trust me, okay?" Tony asked. "Don't get killed, you crazy bastard," Rhodey said after a moment of silence, putting his hand on Tony's armored shoulder. "And we're going to be right behind you as soon as we can." "I know you will be," Tony told him. "Colonel Rhodes, you need to leave the airlock," Jarvis warned. "Good luck," Rhodey said as he walked out. The door slid shut after him immediately, and Tony was alone. He took a deep breath to compose himself, just getting his head in order.
We're ready when you are,
Drongo said through their comlink. They might lose it when Tony got too far, but it was not something he was worried about. They could all handle themselves perfectly well, even without Tony. "All clear," Tony said. "I'll let you know as soon as it's safe to get closer." "Don't kill the other before I get there," Hedgett warned. "Can't promise anything," Tony answered. He was not the only one eager to tear that scum to pieces, but if he was the first to put his finger on him, he would wait for no one to finish the job. Maybe Loki. He would wait for Loki and allow him to take his revenge. "I have started pressure transition," Jarvis reported. Tony did not pay attention to the details. He could see the stats on his HUD, but his whole mind was focused on only one thing: reaching Akram in one piece and finding Loki. Space never felt so close than when the second airtight door opened. Flying with the Iron Mage while using the DNI had almost been like flying with his suit, but he'd always been aware of his feet standing firmly on the floor or his hands resting on the control panel, no matter how deep he ventured. This was something else. At another time, he would take the time to enjoy it, when he had Loki on the other side of the line waiting back on the ship, both fond and exasperated by Tony's antics. This time, he wasted no time on enjoying the sensation of flying without upwind. He didn't have time to feel giddy about how fast he tore through space with so little power in his thrusters, how easy it was to increase his speed since he did not have to carry his own weight or fight gravity. Later, he would enjoy it. Later, he would laugh and cheer and grin at Loki's long, suffering sigh. Later, he would find the time to think about how fitting the name Firebird was, because he was going to burn brightly like a comet when he reached the atmosphere, a lightning-fast shape of heat and glowing metal. "We have reached the asteroid field, sir," Jarvis warned. Tony could see that very well, even with his own eyes. He needed to slow down because his reflexes were not good enough to maneuver at his previous speed. He only saw a few asteroids that were big enough to do serious damage in the Aurelian. They were going to be easy enough to avoid for Drongo. That was a relief, because they really didn't need any more complications. "Any sign of Akram's defenses?" he asked. "Nothing yet, sir," Jarvis answered. "Stay sharp," Tony warned as he twisted and spun around to avoid some more small meteoroids. He could feel a few rocks hitting the suit, but no warning flashed up in his head, so they did not do any damage. He really loved out indoors sometimes. As he got closer and closer to the planet, he left behind the bigger meteoroids that mainly orbited the planet. The ones that were around him now were falling down, getting pulled towards the planet by gravity. "We have reached the thermosphere, sir," Jarvis reported. "There is still no sign of hostile activity." Tony knew better than to relax hearing that. He was neither stupid nor naive, and he would not be lured into a false sense of security. He suddenly had to twist around when a meteor as big as his head flew past him, burning up right in front of his eyes. "Whoa!" he cursed as he watched all the rocks burning up around him, only a few of them staying in one piece to continue their journey down. "We have reached the mesosphere." "Yeah, I got that from the big burning rock speeding past me. Thank you, Jarvis," Tony said. "Then you are also well aware that you need to lower your speed before we enter the stratosphere," Jarvis told him. "Of course I know," Tony said as he slowed down a little, because he did not want to damage anything before the fight began. His HUD was constantly showing the outside temperature of the suit, but it never reached critical levels. "Works like a charm," he said, allowing himself a moment of pride. "Almost uncanny, if I may say so, sir," Jarvis commented. "Don't try to run numbers on it," Tony said. "It's Loki's enchantment." Loki approved of his plan to make his next suit safe for space. Tony refused to have any spells on his first Alandor suit, but this time, when Loki picked up the main breastplate and blinked up at him, Tony couldn't say no. Loki swore that the enchantment on the metal would not have any effect on the suit's electronics or his arc reactor. He was right, of course. Thinking of Loki made the anger boil up in his gut again, and he increased his speed as burning meteorites blasted past him. He could see it in the distance, how many of them crashed into the ground. Large craters scattered on the surface everywhere, obviously done by meteorites much larger than the ones falling down around him. The sky was not blue as Earth's, but much darker. It was tinted with red and violet, colors Tony was only used to see in sunsets. The meteor shower was perfectly visible no matter where he looked, but it was the nebula itself, of course, that covered most of the sky. Again, if it would have been any other day, he might have enjoyed the sight. This time he ignored the dancing colors completely. "Maybe the meteorites took care of most of the planet's defenses," Tony mused as he watched some meteorites hit the ground. It was, of course, too good to be true. His HUD flashed red, and he sharply flew to the right, just as something exploded where he was a moment ago, incinerating a few meteorites that were too close. "Jarvis, tracking," he ordered, and saw from the corner of his eye how Jarvis was scanning the surface. Tony was changing his route every few seconds, not wanting to be predictable. He was not going to be an easy target. After a couple of moments, Jarvis marked every single thing that could be classified as active and hostile on the ground below. "Air defense?" Tony asked. "Positive. Some," Jarvis confirmed. "You are most definitely targeted as well." Tony watched how some meteorites were blown up again, not that far away from him, by an invisible blast. He would have loved to know what sort of weapons these were, but he had other priorities. "But they can't track me well," he said. "Am I too fast?" "Too small, as it appears," Jarvis said as Tony changed directions again, zigzagging towards the ground. He loved it when he was right. Nobody ever expects a guy in weaponized flying armor. "Let's blow them up then," he decided. No matter how very different some technologies were, anti-aircraft weapons had to be built very similarly. Tony would know. You either needed a gun or some sort of missiles. There were not many options when you wanted to destroy something that was in the air while you stayed on the ground. This time it was guns, no bullets though, but they were similar enough and of course big enough to notice them, even from afar. They looked old. Most of the ones Tony caught sight of were covered in moss and lichen, while other plants twisted around them. But none of them were rusty or broken, just obviously left there for a very long time. Centuries if Drongo was right. Tony couldn't help but be impressed. These people really knew what they were doing if their weapons worked this well even after being abandoned for so many years. It was almost a shame to destroy them. At first, he planned to land on the ground, since they couldn't shoot at him if he was that near, but as soon as he got close enough to the surface, his HUD was flashing up with more and more red target dots and warnings. "What are all these?" he asked. "Some of them appear to be turrets, sir," Jarvis said. "There is also something approaching, several of them, in fact." "Where?" Tony asked and turned to take a closer look. "Most likely armed vehicles, sir," Jarvis provided. "I need backup," Tony mumbled as he looked at the sheer amount of them. "I believe your backup is eager to join the fight," Jarvis said. "Right. Target only the anti-aircraft guns in the area," Tony instructed, "and find me weak spots if you can." "I'll do my very best, sir," Jarvis confirmed. Tony wanted to stay away from the turrets and the approaching vehicles without flying too high to be targeted by the anti-aircraft guns again. It was not that easy to do so. Fortunately, it did not take long before his HUD started showing the best spots to shoot at. "I don't know how I survived without you, Jarvis," Tony said as his repulsors flared to life. "That is indeed a mystery, sir," Jarvis answered without a beat. "How's our contact with the Aurelian look like?" he asked. "Sufficient enough to transfer data to the ship's mainframe, but I would not suggest the use of a live audio-video feed just yet," Jarvis said. Tony watched how flames erupted from the gun he was shooting at. Its long barrel cracked and slowly fell down, hitting the ground and stirring up a large cloud of dust. "How many guns do I need to take out before it's safe for them to approach?" Tony asked. "According to my calculations, all of them at least in a 5-mile radius," Jarvis said after a moment of silence. "That's a 30-square-mile area. How many anti-aircraft guns are on it?" Tony asked. "I counted at least 20 of them so far, sir," Jarvis said, "but I do not know for sure whether they are all operational." Tony both wanted to curse or be glad that he finally had something to destroy. "The other's ship?" he asked as he turned to fly to the next anti-aircraft gun. "It has not moved, but it appears to be behind a barrier, sir," Jarvis said. "I am unable to gather more information about it other than its location." "That's more than enough," Tony said as he targeted the next gun. The other could hide in his ship behind whatever shield or barrier he built, but he would not escape. Not from here. Not this time. He thought of every destroyed anti-aircraft gun as a step taken closer to Loki. He counted how many he blew up, counted also how many turrets he destroyed or damaged. He ignored the tanks, because if he started fighting everything that came at him, he would never be able to get close to the other's ship. "That was 21, Jarvis," he said as another gun was engulfed in flames. Whatever technology we used for these weapons, they clearly did not react well to his repulsor blasts. "How many left?" "One more, sir," Jarvis said, the location already showing on his HUD. "Let Drongo know that they can start landing," Tony instructed. "Warn him about all of this, though. Rhodey should jump out as soon as he can. Thor, too. They need to focus on these tanks. The girls should wait. No flying for them while we have so many turrets still working." "Any other instructions, sir?" Jarvis asked. "Yeah, they should all leave the tanks and turrets to Thor and Rhodey and head towards the other's ship right away. We can't get held up here, and patch Rhodey through as soon as he's close enough." "Yes, sir," Jarvis confirmed while Tony targeted the last gun. The way the blue and white flames erupted from its body was a really nice sight. He wanted to wait for the Aurelian to get close before he headed to the other's ship, so he only slowly made his way there. He destroyed the turrets that were shooting at him while he dodged a few smaller meteorites that flew past him. "The movement in the area seems to be increasing, sir," Jarvis reported and showed the stats on the HUD. "Living?" Tony asked, even though he was dubious. No, sir, Jarvis answered. It may very well be possible that more machinery has been activated. Also, there appears to be a city just a few miles past the other's ship. There was no energy signature coming from that area so far. It is why it did not show up on my scans until now.
Maybe he has a few people there controlling things,
Tony guessed. It seemed a lot more plausible than the other being able to control everything from his ship somehow.
Tell Cap,
Tony said.
He should take Bucky, Juyu, and B and get close. Infiltrate, quietly, get behind him. If the other has any soldiers there, they should take them out. The rest of us can handle the big guns and whatever else this place throws at us.
So we need to keep their attention on us, right? Rhodey asked, his voice suddenly coming through. Tony startled just a little bit.
A little warning next time, Jarvis, he said. And yeah, we have the real firepower and the big muscles. They should definitely keep their eyes on us while Cap and the others get behind them.
Sounds like a plan to me. Rhodey agreed. ETA in 2 minutes. It took Tony a moment to realize that the reason he suddenly saw less from the constant meteor shower was because there were clouds gathering above them. The thunder that rang in the distance was a lot more conspicuous. Yeah, and Thor's right behind me, Rhodey added redundantly.
Good, Jarvis, patch him through to me if he has an active communicator,
Tony instructed as he fired both of his repulsors at a turret that was constantly shooting at him. It was not enough to completely destroy it, but it stopped firing for a moment. Tony used the extra time to shoot a stronger blast at it, taking it to pieces.
Thor, there are tanks down on the ground,
Tony said.
The little moving. I know what tanks are, Iron Man,
Thor interrupted.
Great, get rid of them. The ship needs to land and be safe on the ground. Drongo and Bruce can help you when they get there.
Drongo and Bruce can help you when they get here.
I think I will be able to handle them just fine on my own,
Thor answered.
Yeah, give him hell, big guy,
Tony encouraged.
Rhodey, scout the area and target the turrets. Some of them are under a lot of undergrowth, so watch out.
Got it, Tony, Rhodey confirmed. What are you going to do?
The other has a shield up around his ship,
Tony said.
It seems to be his favorite thing to do lately. I'm going to find a way to take it down.
And what about me? Hatchet asked, which meant that the Aurelian was now close enough.
You were going to come to the other ship anyway, no matter what,
Tony said.
But luckily, it's exactly what I need from you. The barrier he used on Earth was both magic and technology, so you're going to help me take this one down. I'm coming with him,
Drongo declared. His tone was hard and told Tony that there was no room for an argument about this.
Fine, just get here as soon as you can,
Tony told them.
What if you can't take the barrier down?
Steve asked. You needed a lot of help on Earth. This is different, Hatchet said before Tony could answer. It even feels different. More alive, less technology, more magic. I can sense it even from this distance. It is like a web spreading from the ship and seeping into everything.
Everything? You mean like into the machines too?
Tony asked. Is that how he did it? How he reactivated all of this? Juyu asked in return immediately. I'm not sure, Hatchet said. Once I'm face to face with any of these machineries, I'll be able to tell. I always thought magic and technology were supposed to be these complete opposites, Pikey said. So what the hell?
That is a human concept. In the 9 realms, the two are one and the same,
Thor said. The wind was not that strong around him now, so he must have landed. The sound of crunching metal and explosions could be heard from his end too, so he probably already started to take out the tanks on the ground. Tony could finally see the other's ship. He even saw the giant hole he tore in its side with the Iron Mage. The other did not have time to repair it. The barrier around it was visible as well. It was a glimmering golden globe, different from the one that covered San Diego. His HUD was already showing every data Jarvis could gather with his scans. The energy signature was almost precisely the same as the one emitting from the guns, turrets, and tanks. It was the same as the one coming from the city a little further away.
Oh, crap.
Tony breathed out as he realized it.
He's not here to take these weapons,
he said to everyone.
It's a test.
A test for what? Rhodey asked.
More magic, less technology.
Tony repeated Hatchet's words.
Juyu's right, that's how he reactivated this place. Whatever it is that he has on his ship, he's using it to control everything else. It's a test run. He's controlling machines with magic. If he knows how to do that, he has a way to turn our own technology against us,
Cap finished. I don't mean just Earth. Tony continued. His voice was frantic and too loud even to his own ears. Sure, we would be screwed too, but there are thousands of planets more advanced than we are, not to mention the 9 realms and Asgard. But why didn't he use this against us? Cap asked.
Maybe we were the first test, Bruce added.
Or maybe he still needed something to make it work, added Hatchet a tad more quietly. No one said anything in reaction. Magic! Stark! The elf continued, his voice getting irritated. No matter what you might think, it does not just exist on its own. There is no magic just floating about ready for the taking. Someone needs to breathe life into the raw energy that is power cosmic or the power of the Yggdrasil. And I cannot be just anyone, not when it is happening on a scale like this. And you can bet it's not the other himself. Tony was too stunned to react right away. His mind was both digesting and rebelling against the idea.
Loki.
Thor said before Tony managed to find his voice again.
He needed Loki.